Welcome, beloveds, to a spiritual remedy. My name is Sunshine Daye, and it is indeed a joy to be here with you today. You are sober. Now let's help you thrive. Let's supercharge your life. Today, we're not only going to explore spiritual tools for your personal transformation, but I trust that I will provide some loving support on your road of recovery, on your road to exploring and expanding on your spiritual growth and unfoldment. Our topic today is a tender one. It is grief and why it feels so heavy and how it impacts our sobriety, our recovery, and how we can actually move through grief with grace. I've often heard it said that grief is love with nowhere to go. Have you ever thought about that? That grief is love with nowhere to go. And when we love deeply, we want that energy to flow. We want it to be expressed. We want it to be shared. We want it to be exchanged and returned. But when we lose someone dear to us or something dear to us, that love that we sense has no clear direction. So it lingers, and sometimes it can feel unbearable. Been there so many times. But what if instead of seeing grief as something that weighs us down, we actually see it as proof of the depth of our love? That's an interesting way to look at it. And what if instead of resisting it and fighting it and trying to avoid it, what if we actually allow it to move through us? Grief is not just sadness. It's a mix of emotions. It's loss, it's confusion, it's longing, and it could even be relief at times. And I know that sometimes that feeling of relief, especially if it's been a long illness and someone hasn't been able to live their life fully, I know that sometimes we feel relief, like, and then we feel guilty about feeling that relief. That's why grief can become so unbearable. Like, do I actually feel that? Do I actually feel lost and confused and a longing? You know, it doesn't follow a straight path, like I'm going to go through this and this and this, and then I'm going to be okay. That's what makes grief so elusive, and getting on the other side of grief so elusive. In one moment, we're fine, and the next moment, we're overwhelmed by a memory or by a scent or a song or a phrase that we hear. I know that was true for me in May of 2024 when my dad died. I can remember being back home and playing pickleball and just feeling on top of the world. I'm playing pickleball, I'm active, and then a memory, just something passed through my mind, and I thought about my dad and how he wasn't here. And I had to stop. Right there, I had to stop. I remember being up against the fence, kneeling down, just sobbing as my friends who I play pickleball with just watched and wondered what was happening and going on. But I remember being so lovingly supported and lifted up, because when I was done and allowed it to move through me, I wiped my cheeks and I said, okay, let's play. And someone said, you okay? You need another minute? I'm good. So that's what I mean by one moment we can be fine, and then the other moment we're just overwhelmed by a memory or by the grief and by the pain. And for those of us that are in recovery, oh my gosh, grief can be especially tricky because so many of us use substances like alcohol and drugs and all kinds of things, right? Just to numb the pain and to avoid feeling, or even just to control the emotions because we felt so out of control. Like we didn't know how to process it. And if we're not careful, grief can become a gateway to relapse, whether it's through emotional isolation or through unhealthy behaviors, or even with returning to substance use. So we want to be able to move through grief with grace, and we want to be consciously moving through our grief and allowing it to pass through us. Here are some signs that you might still be grieving, but not be handling grief in a healthy way. If you're numbing out, and turning to distractions, like I usually say, weapons of mass distraction, you might be in grief, whether it's food or screen time or overworking, or if you find that some of the habits that you put down are creeping back in, you may be experiencing some grief. If you're avoiding emotions, like telling yourself, I shouldn't be feeling this way and let me, get back on track, or if you are angry with others or yourself because things are not going according to plan. If you find yourself getting over angry and just some of those little things, you may still be experiencing grief in an unhealthy way. If you're feeling depression or apathy or hopelessness, or feeling stuck in that grief cycle, there are healthy ways to get on the other side. Or even if you are feeling disconnected from your spiritual practices, I'm going to share with you a couple of ways and a couple of spiritual practices so that you can get beyond your grief in a healthy way, a way that is productive, a way that is tender, and also a way that keeps you sober and keeps you clean and keeps you on the path that you have so diligently worked hard to get. So, first of all, what you want to be able to do is acknowledge it. Don't ignore it, acknowledge it. Don't push it down. Just say to yourself, this is grief and I'm allowed to feel it. Allow yourself to feel the grief and express it. Speak it out loud, write it down, create something meaningful from it. I wrote a song about it. Want to hear it? And let it move through your body. Grief isn't just about emotions. It actually lives in our bodies. So dance, stretch, let it flow. If you need to just, go ahead and cry. Allow yourself to cry. Allow that wave to have its peak and climax, and then let it roll into the nothingness from which it came, like the experience that I shared about. And then, do a spiritual surrender. And what I mean by that is just simply turn it over to spirit, turn it over to your higher power, turn it over to God. Use your prayer, use your meditation, sit in the silence, allow divine love to hold you. Allow yourself to be held by your spirit power, by that infinite power and presence that is never an absence, and seek support. There's people like me who are here to support you. Connect with others who understand. Don't connect with people who are going to be like, yo, that was last year. You need to be over that. No, connect with people who understand and who are going to be a loving presence for you. There's also a spiritual practice that I call a sacred love letter. And before you write this sacred love letter, what I'm going to invite you to do is to just take a moment to yourself, to close your eyes, to take some cleansing breaths and slow down. And then to just imagine that your grief is love that simply needs a place to go. So imagine this is love and it needs somewhere to go. And so if you find that you've lost someone dear to you, write them this sacred letter. Tell them in your letter what's in your heart. Allow your love to flow there into that letter. If it's in fact a dream, the loss of a dream, then write your future self a letter. And tell yourself how you're still worthy of joy, and love up on your future self in this letter. And then just create for yourself a ritual of release. Read it out loud. Offer it to the universe. Bury it. Burn it. Put it somewhere special. And let love find its way back to you. In the Science of Mind philosophy, we have principles, and one of the principles is eternal life, and that life is eternal. And a lot of times grief will convince us that all is lost. But the truth, life continues. Love continues. Energy can never be destroyed. It is only transformed. Your love still exists. It's just in a new form. And so a new way of preventing disabling grief is, instead of waiting for that feeling that is an ache, spend it. I like to call it currency. Love as a currency in action. Love as a currency in action. So you have all this love to give. So spend it freely. Spend it freely while you can. Say the things that you would regret saying later on, that you would regret not saying later on. That's pretty funny. Say the things that you would regret not saying. So in other words, kind of like Stevie Wonder said, like, I just called to say I love you, right? Because we never know when we won't have that chance where that person is going to hear those words. Hold the door open for someone. Be the love and celebrate the people in your life and celebrate those moments now, right? Because when grief does come, you'll know that deep in your soul, you have loved as fully as possible. Grief is not the enemy. It's just reminding us of how deeply we've lived. And when life doesn't go according to plan, we have a choice. We can stay stuck, or we can trust that something greater is unfolding. Beloveds, my prayer for you today is this. May you move through grief with grace. May you know that love never leaves. And may you always allow Spirit to guide you into the fullness of your joy. Until the next time, keep spending your love. Bye for now.